Hi, and welcome to CityBeat. I'm your host, Beej, Recreation Coordinator with Lewiston Parks and Recreation. And today we have Lewiston City Firefighter and Fire Inspector, Steve Gregor. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for coming on CityBeat today.
You bet.
So let's just jump right in. Tell the viewers a little bit about you and your position at the fire department and how long you've been here.
Yeah, my official title is Fire Inspector, Fire Investigator. I've been with the department for probably 7 years now. My major duties are obviously inspections, residential, commercial, business license inspections. We do residential and commercial plan reviews. We do public education, fire investigations, juvenile fire center intervention, blasting and fireworks permits, and as of a year ago, we've inherited the weed abatement program.
So let's elaborate on that. Can you give an overview of what the weed abatement program is and what its goals are?
Yeah, Lewiston City Code Section 17 basically prohibits the growth on land of noxious weeds and rank vegetation. That includes not only the land itself, but overgrowth in streets, sidewalks, site obstructions, and also fire hazards. Every year in about May, we put a notice in the Lewiston Morning Tribune that basically informs landowners that it's a violation to have noxious weeds or rank vegetation on their land, and they have 10 days to rectify that problem. After I receive a complaint, which by the way, our whole program is complaint driven, and last year we received 122 complaints about weeds. And that occurs usually in a 3-month period from June to August. So after I receive a complaint, I confirm the complaint. I have some options there. I try to contact the owner first, see what the problem is. I can post the property, I can and/or send a letter of violation on the property. And at that point, basically, the landowner has 3 options in abatement: herbicide application, mowing, trimming, pruning, cutting, or possibly putting a fire break around the property.
And what's a fire breaker?
Basically, the fire break would be like a 30-foot strip so that if the entire property caught on fire, when it got to the end, we wouldn't be infringing on houses or shelter or any kind of structure. So.
And can you elaborate and talk to viewers about how the Lewiston Fire Department became the enforcing agency on weed and weed abatement issues?
Yeah, in 2013, actually before that, community development handled the weed abatement program. It was decided basically that it would probably be better off to have all code enforcement in the Lewiston Police Department. When we reviewed that, we looked at it, and actually a lot of weed complaints were not only weed complaints, but they were fire hazards. So instead of trying to differentiate between is this a weed complaint or a fire hazard, we just thought it was better if the fire department handled the entire weed program.
Fantastic. So can you go through a little bit about how, if there's a complaint and it's investigated, and so how does, and it's, let's say it's city property, how does the fire department go about taking care of, a city property that might have a weed issue?
As far as the city property goes, I usually deal with Corky Fazio and ground maintenance supervisor, and just basically inform him that somebody's called in and this is a property we're talking about. And a lot of times it's tough to differentiate between right-of-ways and personal property and city property and who's responsible for what. But, we just try to work through those issues.
With Corky, ground maintenance supervisor, the fire department, and private citizens, right?
Correct.
What is some important information the public should know about their responsibilities as landowners concerning weed and/or rank vegetation?
Well, a couple of the issues that we are confusing to landowners, and they come up all the time, is first of all, the landowner is responsible for vegetation or weeds, clean the pavement on an improved street. So a lot of times we'll get calls and they'll say, you know what, you guys need to come out here and clean the sidewalk off because I got vegetation infringing on it, of a complaint, something like that. Well, the city code tells them that they're responsible all the way to pavement. So all the weeds or vegetation in between that section is the responsibility of the landowner. Another complaint we get a lot is two landowners with a property line running between them and the vegetation growing right on that property line, infringing on one or the other. That really is not the city's deal. That's between the two landowners. A lot of times we don't even know where the property line is, who planted the vegetation in the first place. So it's almost impossible for us to try to step in and intervene in that situation.
That's definitely one of the challenges. What are some other challenges that you're facing as the weed abatement, agency or enforcing agency?
Yeah, and I've only been at this 1 year, so everything kind of hits me with a surprise. But first of all, Lewiston has a lot of land that's steep and rocky. So trying to get mowers or larger spray rigs or whatever you want to call it on that property is almost impossible. So then we're talking about spot spraying and some other techniques. But the other thing, which is a little sensitive, is that, like it or not, we're a rural city, if you want to put it that way. I mean, we have a lot of wildlife in our city limits. Deer, turkeys, raccoons, pheasants, dove, quail, raptors, and thousands of songbirds. So in the spring, late May, early June, when the weeds are really growing and when it's most opportune to spray those weeds, we've got a lot of wildlife trying to produce young. So we try to be sensitive, especially to large tracts. We don't want to run a mower and a big sprayer through there and destroy wildlife if we can help it. Mm-hmm. Another thing, and it's probably the toughest challenge that I have, is we have a lot of people in town who probably aren't physically or financially able to take care of their own weed problem. And in that case, what we try to do is get other organizations involved, church groups, scouts. There's a group called Interlink that tries to help people out. And actually sometimes the person submitting the claim, if I tell them what the situation is, they've gone over there and abated the problem themselves.
So yeah, that's really good that there's those opportunities for individuals that are low income or elderly, locally have some sort of option to help them out, which is a good thing. Moving on to possible consequences. If a landowner decides they're not going to respond to a violation, what can happen to them?
Well, there's two scenarios. First of all, we have the noxious weed or rank vegetation complaint or violation. And in that case, after their letter, after their posting, after I talk to them, whatever conversations I can have or contact I can have with them, if basically I haven't even got a response, at that point we can fine them $100 a day for every day that they're in violation. I can contact Parks and Rec and have the property abated myself. In that case, the bill would be sent to the property owner. If he didn't pay it in 30 days, now I can go to the county tax collector and they can file a lien against their property. So it can get pretty serious, obviously, and we never want to go there, but those are some of the consequences. And also, if it's a fire hazard, everything changes. Right now, I can give them 24-hour notice. If they don't have it abated, $300 a day. So the big difference between a weed complaint and a fire hazard.
Wow. That could be potentially a lot of money.
Yeah, like I say, we try to, obviously, we don't want to give out fines. We don't want to lien properties. We don't want to do anything. All we want is the problem taken care of. So obviously, that's our goal.
Right. Talking about weed specifically, what of the noxious weeds cause the most complaints?
Our biggest complaint, actually, and it's not really a weed problem, it's people just not mowing their lawns. And if you live in a neighborhood and somebody's lawn is 2 feet high, it makes the whole neighborhood look bad. So we get a lot of those complaints. Probably as far as a weed species go, one of the biggest offenders and one of the ugliest ones is thistles. Bull thistle, Canadian thistle, star thistle. A lot of those complaints. Probably my nemesis in the weed program, that it's only been a year, but is puncture weed or puncture vine or goat heads, whatever you want to call it. It's a low-growing vine, little yellow flowers on it. Comes around about August. If you don't spray it within a 2-week period, you get the little 3-pronged thorns everywhere. Your kids' bikes got them stuck in there, tires in cars got them stuck, and that's the way they spread throughout the city. In August, you can drive down almost any street in Lewiston and find puncture vine. And it's extremely hard to get rid of unless you spray it in that 2-week period. No control on it. Also, got my first weed complaint yesterday for this year. Tumbleweeds. There's about a 40-acre section in the orchards, 7 or 8 different property owners. Of course, tumbleweeds grow to this side of the property, and then they blow to that side of the property, and they don't have people's names on them for where they came from. So I don't know. We're going to have to deal with that hopefully next year and get that property sprayed so we don't have the same problem.
So because this is so new for you, are there going to be any changes in the way the program is handled for this year, for 2014?
Probably the only change we're going to make is we're going to try to be a little proactive, and every landowner who received a complaint on their property last year is going to get a letter just basically reminding them that, this needs to be taken care of before it becomes a complaint, and it would make things a lot easier for everybody. And if I could stress something too, the best way to get a complaint resolved, the quickest way, is communication with your neighbor or whoever you're making the complaint again. That's your first step. After that, if you have to complain, you call the Lewiston Fire Administration office, or you can actually email city departments from the city's website.
Yeah, my next question was because it's complaint driven, how do citizens get a hold of you to be able to take care of those problems, or have a complaint about a weed problem?
Right. Fire administration number, and then also on the city's website.
Cool. And again, City of Lewiston website is cityoflewiston.org. It's super easy to navigate. All those phone numbers. There's actually a contact list also. So if citizens need specific phone numbers, those are available on the website. And like I said, it's super easy to navigate and easy to use. Or you can always call City Hall, and they'll help direct you to the correct place. Before we go, is there anything else you want to add about your position, the fire department, or weed abatement at all?
Just to the fact that try to contact your neighbor first of all and get the problem resolved. And a lot of times we can go over with the complainant to the property owner's place and try to get things resolved before we start getting into some conflicts and things. So that's probably my main point about our program.
Cool. Well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking your time and sharing with viewers what the weed abatement problem or the program is here in the city of Lewiston. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
You bet. Let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. On behalf of my guest, Steve Gregor, and everybody here, we will see you next time on CityBeat.